"I'm carrying your future sibling," my mother announced, standing in the middle of my wedding reception in a white dress that clung to her barely visible bump, her hand placed dramatically on her stomach. "I wanted you to hear it from me before the rumors started. Daniel and I have fallen in love, and this baby is our blessing." 200 guests sat frozen in their seats while my fiancé, now husband of exactly 47 minutes, stared at the floor, unable to meet my eyes, as my mother smiled with the serene satisfaction of a woman who'd finally won a competition I didn't know we were having. What she didn't expect, what no one in that room could have predicted, was that I'd been waiting for exactly this moment for 3 months. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I walked calmly to the microphone, looked my mother directly in the eyes, and said 6 words. "The DNA test results came back yesterday." My mother's face went gray. The story of how I arrived at this moment begins 4 months before my wedding. I'd been engaged to Daniel Marsh for 2 years, a relationship that had seemed perfect on paper. He was handsome, successful, attentive in all the ways that mattered. My mother, Victoria, had adored him from the moment we'd met, which I'd taken as a good sign. I should have recognized it as a warning. I'd first suspected something was wrong when Daniel started working late more frequently, always with excuses that felt rehearsed. Then I noticed he'd changed the password on his phone. Small things, easily explained away. But I'd grown up watching my mother manipulate everyone around her. I had a finely tuned radar for deception. So I started paying attention. The confirmation came 3 months before the wedding, when I'd stopped by Daniel's apartment unexpectedly and found my mother's car in the parking lot. I didn't go inside. Instead, I sat in my own car and waited. When my mother emerged an hour later, adjusting her clothing, smoothing her hair, I took photographs. I could have confronted them immediately. Could have called off the wedding, exposed them publicly, burned everything down in a blaze of righteous fury. But I'd spent 27 years as Victoria Ashworth's daughter. I knew how she operated. Any direct confrontation would be twisted, redirected, somehow made to be my fault. She'd gaslight everyone, including me. Daniel would claim I was paranoid, jealous, mentally unstable. I needed proof they couldn't deny. And I needed to choose the moment of revelation myself. So I started planning. The first step was documentation. Over 3 months, I gathered evidence. Photographs, phone records I obtained through means I'm not proud of, credit card statements showing hotel charges, testimony from the doorman at Daniel's building who confirmed my mother's frequent visits. But the most important piece came when my mother announced, privately to my father and me, that she was 12 weeks pregnant. "At 47, it's a miracle," she'd said, glowing. "The doctor says the baby is perfectly healthy." My father had been shocked but supportive. He'd always wanted more children. I'd said nothing, done the mental math, and felt the final piece click into place. If my mother was 12 weeks pregnant, the conception had occurred during the period when I knew she'd been sleeping with Daniel. I hired a private investigator. I consulted with a geneticist. And I learned that prenatal paternity testing was possible as early as 8 weeks through a simple blood draw from the mother. The challenge was obtaining that blood. My mother had always been vain about her health, constantly visiting doctors and specialists for every minor concern. I used that vanity against her. "I found this amazing preventive health screening," I told her. "Full blood work, genetic markers, early detection for everything. My wedding gift to you. Let's do it together as a mother-daughter bonding experience." She'd agreed enthusiastically. At the clinic, one I'd carefully selected for its comprehensive testing capabilities, we both had blood drawn. What my mother didn't know was that I'd arranged for her sample to be sent to a private lab for prenatal paternity testing. I'd provided a sample from Daniel as well, obtained from his apartment during one of his many work-late nights. The results came back 2 days before my wedding. The baby was Daniel's. I now had irrefutable proof that my fiancé had impregnated my mother. The question was, what to do with it? I could have canceled the wedding. That would have been the sensible choice. But sensible would have let my mother control the narrative. She'd claim she was a victim of Daniel's seduction. She'd position herself as the one who'd tried to stop it, who'd been overwhelmed by passion, who deserved forgiveness. Daniel would slink away to another city, find another woman, repeat his patterns. Neither of them would face real consequences. I wanted consequences. I wanted every person who'd ever listened to my mother's gossip, who'd witnessed her subtle cruelties toward me, who'd believed her performance of perfect motherhood. I wanted them all to see who she really was. So I let the wedding proceed. I walked down the aisle. I said my vows. I signed the marriage certificate. I smiled for photographs. And I waited. I knew my mother couldn't resist a grand gesture. She'd been competing with me my entire life. For my father's attention, for social status, for the spotlight at every family event. My wedding was the biggest stage she'd ever have access to. She would use it. I was certain. The moment came during the toasts. My maid of honor had just finished a heartfelt speech. The best man was about to stand when my mother rose from her seat, champagne glass in hand. She was wearing white. Not ivory, not cream, pure, unmistakable white. A dress that showcased her figure and the subtle curve of her pregnancy. "I need to say something before the evening goes any further," she announced, her voice carrying perfectly across the ballroom. "Something the family should know." I watched her cross to the center of the room, watched her position herself for maximum visibility, watched her prepare to detonate her bomb. "I'm carrying your future sibling," she told me, hand on her stomach. "Daniel and I have fallen in love. I know this is shocking, but real love doesn't follow rules. This baby is our blessing." The room went silent. 200 people stared. My father had gone pale. Daniel was looking at the floor. My bridesmaids were frozen in horror. And I felt nothing but calm. I'd known this was coming. I'd prepared for it. I walked to the microphone. "The DNA test results came back yesterday." My mother's confidence flickered. "I know about the affair," I continued evenly. "I've known for 3 months. I have photographs, phone records, hotel receipts, witness statements. I have documentation of every encounter, every lie, every betrayal." "Chloe," Daniel started. "Don't." I didn't look at him. "I also have the paternity test. The one from the blood sample Mom gave at the preventive health screening, she thought was just routine blood work." My mother's face had drained of color. "The baby is Daniel's. That's confirmed. What's also confirmed," I paused, letting the silence build, "is the genetic marker for Huntington's disease that runs in his family. The disease Daniel failed to disclose to me during our entire relationship. The disease he apparently also failed to disclose to you, Mother." Now Daniel went pale. "What?" My mother turned to him. "What is she talking about?" "Daniel's father died of Huntington's at 53. His brother is showing early symptoms. Daniel has a 50% chance of carrying the gene. He refused to get tested because he didn't want to know." I turned to face my mother directly. "Congratulations on your blessing." The room erupted. What followed was chaos. My father stood, his face a mask of fury and heartbreak. "Victoria, is this true?" My mother was still staring at Daniel. "You didn't tell me. I didn't think it was relevant. You got me pregnant and didn't tell me about a genetic condition." "Chloe, please." Daniel tried to approach me. "Don't come near me." I stepped back. "Our marriage is being annulled. The paperwork is already prepared. This ceremony was never about becoming your wife. It was about exposing you in front of everyone who matters. You planned this. For 3 months. Every detail. Every contingency." I looked at my mother. "I learned from the best. You taught me that image is everything, that public perception matters more than private truth. So I gave you a public truth you can never escape." My mother was crying now, genuine tears, perhaps for the first time in my presence. "Chloe, I'm your mother. You slept with my fiancé. You got pregnant with his child. You wore white to my wedding to announce it in front of 200 people. I shook my head. You stopped being my mother the moment you decided your satisfaction mattered more than my future." I turned to the assembled guests. "I apologize for the disruption to your evening. Please enjoy the dinner. It's already paid for. The open bar will continue for another 3 hours. Consider this not a wedding reception, but a going-away party. I'm leaving tomorrow for an extended trip abroad." I walked toward the exit. My father caught up with me in the lobby. "Chloe, wait." I stopped but didn't turn around. "I didn't know. I swear to God, I didn't know about any of it." "I believe you. What happens now?" "Now you decide what you want to do with the information you have." I finally faced him. "You've been married to her for 30 years, Dad. You know what she's capable of. This wasn't her first betrayal. It was just the first one I could prove." His face crumpled. "I suspected. Over the years. But I never." "I know." I didn't want to believe it either. I hugged him briefly. "I'm sorry you got caught in this. But I couldn't let her win. I couldn't let them both walk away clean while I was destroyed. Where will you go?" "Somewhere far from here. Somewhere I can start over without her shadow following me." I squeezed his hand. "I'll stay in touch. With you. Only you." I left for Portugal the next morning. The aftermath played out through secondhand reports and occasional phone calls with my father. Daniel disappeared from the city within a week, reportedly to stay with relatives in another state. My mother attempted damage control but failed spectacularly. The story had spread too far, confirmed by too many witnesses. My father filed for divorce 2 months later. The proceedings were ugly. My mother tried to claim the revelation had been fabricated, that I'd manipulated the DNA test, that the entire wedding spectacle had been my own mental breakdown. No one believed her. The guests who'd witnessed her announcement, her white dress, her triumphant smile, they'd all seen who she really was. For the first time in her life, Victoria Ashworth couldn't spin her way out of consequences. She had the baby 6 months later. A girl. The Huntington's test came back negative. At least, the child had dodged that genetic bullet. But Daniel wanted no involvement, and my mother was left raising an infant alone in her late 40s, socially ostracized, divorced, and finally facing the isolation she'd always inflicted on others. I stayed in Portugal for a year. I learned the language, made new friends, started a small business consulting remotely for American companies. I dated occasionally, nothing serious. I healed in ways I hadn't realized I needed. When I finally returned to the States, I settled in a different city, built a different life, became a different person than the one who'd walked down that aisle. My father visits twice a year. He's remarried now, a quiet woman who genuinely seems to make him happy. We don't discuss my mother. But last month, I received a letter. It was from Victoria. Handwritten. The first direct communication she'd attempted since the wedding. Chloe, I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. What I did was unforgivable. But I wanted you to know that I understand now what I destroyed. Not just your wedding or your trust, your entire sense of safety in the world. I took something from you that can never be replaced. I tell myself I was unhappy, lonely, jealous of your youth and your future. But those are explanations, not excuses. I made choices. Selfish, destructive choices. And you paid for them. I'm not asking for anything. I just wanted you to know that I see what I did. Finally. Too late. Your mother, whether I deserve the title or not. I read the letter 3 times. Then I wrote back. Victoria, you're right. You don't deserve forgiveness. What you did was deliberate, calculated, and designed to maximize my humiliation. But I've spent the last 2 years learning to stop letting your actions define my life. I'm happy now. Genuinely happy. And part of that happiness comes from accepting that I can't control who you are, only who I choose to become. I don't forgive you. But I'm done being angry. The weight of carrying that fury was heavier than you deserve. You have a daughter who needs a mother. Try to do better for her than you did for me. Chloe. My mother wore white to my wedding and announced she was pregnant with my fiancé's baby. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I exposed the truth in front of everyone who'd ever believed her lies. Some people called it revenge. I called it justice. But the real victory wasn't the public humiliation or the dramatic revelation. The real victory was walking away whole, building a life she couldn't touch, becoming someone she'd never expected me to be. That's the best revenge there is.